In today's episode, I'm going to show you a method of converting your colour images to black and white with a level of control you can't get with just a black and white adjustment layer. Using this method has completely transformed how I make black and white images and why they look so fantastic. We're going to take an image that looks like this and make it into an image that looks like this, and we're not going to use a black and white adjustment layer whatsoever. Okay, so black and white images are a fantastic way of creating another layer of depth or a bit more of a story to your images. But by using the method I'm about to show you, it's going to really up your black and white photography game. So let's jump into Affinity Photo and I'll show you exactly what I mean. And this is the image you're going to be editing today then. So as you can see, it's a picture of me that I took in my home studio. I'm holding a Super 8mm camera, and this was part of a website uplift I did for the wedding videography portion of my business. And yeah, I actually ended up using this photo. It's on my website now. So what I want to do is sort of show you how I get to the point of converting an image into black and white in my workflow. And it's not what a lot of tutorials will tell you how to do. Do a color edit first and then I'll convert it to black and white. I don't just do a black and white image, and that's across the board. That's no matter what image I'm working on. I've always done it that way. Several reasons. One, it gives me two images to work with. I have a color and a black and white. And second, I just prefer that method of working. It's just how I've always done things. So let me strip this back quickly and show you exactly how we got to this point of this is the finished color image for this photograph. I'm gonna take all the layers off. This was my original. I then did some cleanup. So I did some in-painting, there was some cleanup of the skin, and then did some frequency separation and added in some dodging and burning, and then I added a tone map, and that's how we got to this layer here. I then did my color adjustments. I then added in my contrast to really sort of make that image start popping. Then in my live adjustment layers, what I've got in there is a little bit of clarity on a mask. I've got a high pass on a mask, so that it's just my eyes and my eyebrows, my nose and my lips. So I'm highlighting those features in the face, and it has the effect of not only sharpening those features up, it then has an effect of softening the skin around it. So that's why I've done that. And there's also a hand painted vignette. So I did my own vignette and layered that in. And then what I've got here is some texture overlays and some film grain. Okay, and then this was my final image, and I was really happy with this image. I really like the way it turned out, but looking at it, I think it would convert into black and white really well, and I think, especially given the vintage camera I'm holding, I think it would suit this photograph to go into black and white. People have probably told you to do in the past is to add a black and white adjustment layer, play around with your sliders and make an edit that way. So let's do that to start with, just so we can see the difference. So we'll come down to our adjustment panel, I'm gonna add a black and white adjustment layer, and here's our control panel. And as you can see, we've got the red, yellow, green, cyan, blue and magenta channels. And as you probably are already well aware, you can then adjust these sliders to make an edit. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to make an edit using this, and we'll skip forward to the end when I've done that edit. Okay, and then that's our edit done. So that didn't take me very long at all. That was probably a minute tops. And we've got a black and white image that looks absolutely fine. There's nothing wrong with that. And if you're on a quick workflow, then great, it does absolutely everything you need it to do. But what I want to show you is a method that I use that gives you so much more control over how that image will end up looking. Okay, so what we'll do then is we'll take off that black and white adjustment layer, and then we're going to keep it there so we've got something to refer to at the end. We can compare the two at the end of the video. So the first thing I would do if I was going to convert this to black and white is to add a gradient map adjustment. So I'm going to come down here to gradient map, and the first thing you need to do with this gradient map is come to the center point and click, and you're going to delete the center point. We don't need the center point, we only need two colors in this. What we're then going to do, so obviously with our gradient maps, to the left is pure black, and all the way to the right of our scale, so the blue in this case is pure white. So we've got red and blue, black and white. What we now want to do is change those to black and white. So we're going to come to red, and it doesn't really matter what sort of scale you're on, so I'm just in the HSL color wheels. So I'm going to drag it all the way to the tip into the black, and that has changed, that has mapped all the darkest elements of the photograph to black. What we're then going to do is change the blue and do the opposite, so we're going to go to white. And there we go. And you can see there, but by deleting the middle point, we've now got pure black on the left and we've got pure white on the right. And it's a graduated mask all the way through the middle. And as you can see how that transfers onto our photograph or our image, we've now converted it of sorts to a black and white image, but in no way are we done yet. So we can cancel that off. So from here on in, for the rest of the edit, what we're going to be doing is working underneath that gradient map. And by working underneath it, any changes we make, that gradient map is going to project as on a scale between pure black and pure white. It'll become more apparent as we go through. So let's get on with the next step. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to add a HSL adjustment layer. So we're going to come down to our adjustments panel, go to HSL, and hit HSL. Now we're going to move the control panel. Now as you can see, look, the HSL adjustment panel is above our gradient map. We don't want that. So we're going to simply click and drag and drop it underneath the gradient map. Obviously with a HSL adjustment layer, I can affect the hue and the saturation as well as the luminance. So I've already got 3 times more control than I would have in the black and white adjustment layer. So if I come to my red channel, if I come to my hue slider and start moving it along, you can see that it either gets darker and then it gets darker again, or if I move it the other way, it gets lighter, depending what color I'm shifting those reds underneath that gradient map too. And so what that means is I can have a finer control of the contrast and the detail that I pump into the red channel. So I think there looks pretty good. So then if I go to my saturation, I can then determine how strong that effect is within that color. So I can desaturate it and you can see it getting lighter, or I can pump the saturation in and you can see it gets darker. But it's very gradual. And so it gives me a lot of control over how I want that color red underneath my black and white gradient map to look. And then if I come to my luminosity, same thing, I can lighten the color and I can darken the color. And so as you can see already, you get a finer level of control by doing it this way. And you can then obviously go through and do this with each and every color. So I can come to my yellow channel, same thing. I can move the slider up here. And obviously some colors will affect the image more than others. You can see there my face getting brighter and brighter. And then we can close that down because it's a little bit too strong. So probably somewhere about there. Can pump the saturation up. You can see there that it's making my beard and my hairline sort of a little bit brighter because there's obviously some blonde streaks in my beard. And they'll fall under the yellow tones, or you can darken it right off. And same with the luminance, you can pump that up, you can lower it down. As you can see there, I'm affecting different parts of the image. We can go into each individual color and affect the hue, saturation and luminance, which affects how they appear in black and white underneath our gradient map, because our gradient map is then taking what we're changing here in our hue, saturation and our luminosity, and it's then projecting that on a tone between pure black and pure white. So what I'm going to do now is finish up going through all the colors and editing this together, and I'll see you when I've done that. Okay, and then this is where I've got to now in my edit. So this is the HSL adjustment layer is done, and as you can see that's starting to look pretty good. It's starting to take shape. So if I take it off, this is how we started with our gradient map over the top, and then using the HSL adjustments, this is where we're at right now. Now just to sort of prove to you what the gradient map is doing, if I uncheck that, you can see the colors have gone horrible. We've really messed with the colors. It looks horrible, doesn't it? Okay, but it doesn't matter, because then when we click this, the gradient map is moving all those colors onto a tone between black and white. So although the image underneath it looks horrible, we've really screwed with the colors, it's working for what we want to use it for now. And that was just me showing you that, you know, we are still affecting colors underneath our adjustments here. Just because it's in black and white doesn't mean we've lost those colors. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to add a selective color adjustment. So you're going to come down here to your adjustment panel. I'm going to come all the way up to selective color. As we know, selective color, you can go in and you can affect how much or how little of each color is within each color. So we can affect the cyans, we can pump more cyan in, or we can take more cyan out. With magenta, we can push more magenta in, or we can pull magenta out, which obviously has the effect of adding green. Or with yellow, we can push more yellow in, or we can take yellow out, which has the effect of adding blue. And then down here at the bottom, we have our black and white adjustment scales. How much black or white are we pumping into the color red only? So we can brighten that color up, or we can really start darkening it down and get really moody if we want to. So let's reset this. So what I'm now going to do is show you exactly how I would use this. So I think probably just a little adjustment on the, add a little bit more black into the red. Okay, let's see what yellow and blue is doing. Okay, I kind of like what is happening when I push a bit more yellow in. It's sort of closing my face in a bit more. It's making me a bit more defined in my face. Okay, so as you can see, green, adding green in, so taking magenta away and adding green is brightening my face up. Whereas pushing magenta in is sort of then darkening my face down. It's also really highlighting all the detail in my skin. You can see there that, you know, you can see every sort of lump and bump and crack in the skin. So what I'm going to do is just pull a little bit of magenta out, add a bit of green in, and then your cyan and your red. So yeah. By adding red is darkening, and sorry, adding cyan is darkening the image, and then pulling cyan out, so adding red is lightening the image. So I like that a little bit darker because of where it's affecting. It's affecting around the shadow area, and I quite like how that's sort of edging in my face. So that's how I would edit the red channel. So let's now take a color we've not played with before. So let's go with our cyans, okay? And that I find the easiest way to see what you're going to be affecting in that image as a quick broad look at what you're going to be affecting is if you come down to your black slider and just slide it up and down. So you're right, so with my cyans, I'm predominantly working on my jumper and the lighting on my jumper. So I'm gonna put that back to 0. I now know roughly what that color is affecting. So if I come back to my cyan, if I push more cyan in, okay, so by taking cyan out, I'm brightening it up, and by pushing cyan in, I'm darkening it down. So let's take a little bit out, brighten up a little bit. So magenta, what we're going to do is we'll push some magenta in. Okay, we're darkening that down. If we pull that out, we're lightening up, and the more we lighten that, you can see there's a little bit of, you can see the detail in my top there, and I kind of like that. So I'm probably going to leave magenta around there. Okay, so yellow is a very fine adjustment with the yellow and blue. The more blue added in, the highlights in the jumper are getting slightly lighter, and the more yellow, they're getting slightly duller. So what I might do is just push a bit more yellow in, and that's how I would use the selective color adjustment to make these adjustments in my images. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to finish up my selective color adjustment. I'm going to go through each individual color and change the mix so I can get the image looking how I want it to look. And then what I'll do is I'll meet you there and show you how we're looking at that moment in time. And so I've just finished making all the adjustments on my selective color adjustment layer. And if I take this off and on again, so that's it off, that's it on, you can see that we're making, they're only finite adjustments, they're really small, intricate adjustments, but I like that finer control that I get using this method. That's off, that's it on again. So where do I go from here then? So what we're going to do is we're going to add a color balance adjustment. So we'll come down here to color balance. What we're going to do is we're going to take this to the shadows first. Now I always work more force of habit. I don't know why I do it. I always have done. I work shadows, midtones, highlights. I've always done it that way. I just find it easier to build up from the darkest parts of the image. Here we have obviously cyans and reds, magentas and greens, yellows and blues. Now what we're going to do with the color balance is by pushing or pulling how much of these colors are pushed into the shadows, midtones and highlights will affect how the image looks. So if I take my cyans and reds in the shadows, and I start pulling them towards cyans, you can see how dark that image gets quite quickly. And then if I take them the other way and I push them up towards the red areas, it starts brightening the image. And so what we can then do is play with these sliders, and you probably don't need a lot of adjustment with these, and add a bit of color contrast. I think I kind of like a little bit darker on the cyans. We come to magenta and green. Now, if you've played with color balance before, you know that some of these colors in certain tonal areas are a lot stronger. So for me, I've always found that the magenta and green slider in the shadows is a very, very strong effect. You need hardly any of it at all. And don't be scared to not make adjustments. If you think it looks good how it is, don't adjust it. I mean, have a play, see how it looks. If you think it looks fine, then there's nothing worse than changing things just for the sake of changing things. Pump a little bit of blue in. Okay, so that's looking okay there. So we come to our midtones. What happened here? So pumping cyan in. Okay, so that's affecting a lot of the background as well. So I think we'll come a little bit to the right hand side of this, see what the magenta's doing. Okay, so green washes it out a little bit, takes a little bit of contrast out, and magenta is starting to pull a bit of contrast back. Okay, so we'll maybe go slightly on the magenta side. And then yellow, what's yellow doing? Blue. Okay, so that's mainly affecting skin tones and maybe a little bit onto the yellow. And as you can see, I'm not making huge adjustments here. I might be moving the slider to see what that effect is doing over the course of the whole image, but then my final adjustment, so I've got +8%, -6%, -5%. I'm not doing drastic change at this point. I'm really just sort of using this as a finite control to get that last little bit of detail in. So highlights. Okay, so adding red in is really brightening up the background to the point where it's almost breaking up a little bit, so we don't want to add too much of that. And then blue, or cyan, sorry, is going to darken that down. So probably 6 or 7%, just to brighten up that background, just give me a bit of separation from the background. Magenta, so magenta is darkening the whole image down, and green is brightening up. Now you can see here, like, I've gone too far, so I'm only at 16%. I've already started to clip around the highlights on my face, so that's something to be careful at this point, because and on my hands here, because you've made a lot of adjustments already, that it's going to be quite easy, especially in the highlight areas, to start clipping. So let's take that back down. I think I'm just going to leave that at 0. I'm quite happy with where that is. A little bit of blue, just to 4%. So again, 6% for your cyan and red, +6%. 0, I haven't touched magenta and green, and yellow and blue is +4 into the blues. And that's color balance adjustment. So if I take that on and off, again, a small little change. And then just to show you what's happening underneath, if we now take the gradient map off, you can see the colors are still horrible. It's dark, it's unusable. Some of it is massively oversaturated, especially around my lips, and my thumb is almost the same color as my lips. It looks pretty nasty. It looks like I'm really not very well. So let's get that back on. Okay, but then the black and white image looks quite nice. All I've done there is to show you that all the adjustments you're making underneath are being affected by the gradient map layer on top. So it's really important you have that gradient map, and everything you work on is beneath that gradient map. So we've got a HSL adjustment, a selective color adjustment, and a color balance adjustment to give us this finished look. So if I now take this and shift and click, we can now group these all together, and we can call this black and white. Okay, so that's our black and white. So we can take that on. This is our color image, and as you can see, it's a natural progression into the black and white. The black and white really does suit, because we've gone in and dialed in each individual color. It looks very similar to the color image, but we've maintained that detail within the black and white. If we go back to just our black and white adjustment, you can see there's nothing wrong with that. But then if we take that off, you can see there's a lot more detail. There's been a lot more control in the way we've made that black and white image. Okay, so what I've done here is I've dropped all the images onto one canvas for you, so you can just see a bit of a comparison. So we've obviously got the original, the color version on the left, and then the middle version is a normal black and white adjustment layer. So we just put that adjustment layer on, played with the sliders of each channel, played with the luminance of each color, and that's the black and white image we've got. And then on the right is my method with using your HSL adjustment layer, using a selective color adjustment layer, and using your color balance adjustment layer, all under a gradient map that is mapped from pure black to pure white. And so there you have it. That's exactly how I edit my images into black and white without ever touching the black and white adjustment layer. I really hope you found this video helpful, and it's something that you might take away and implement in your own workflow. And certainly I hope it's something you at least give a go and do your own comparisons to see which you prefer using. Do you prefer using a black and white adjustment layer, or do you want more control over your black and white images? I'd really love to hear from you. If you found this video helpful at all, then please leave me a comment below and maybe hit the like button. I'd love to hear about your experiences. Did you use my method on an image and it's something you love? Did you not get along with it? Did you not find it helpful? Please let me know in the comments below. I'd be really interested to hear exactly what you've got to say about it. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode. Take care.